Welcome, everybody. This is your ServiceNow crew speaking. If you're wondering where we have been for the last 2 months, it's because we set our stasis chamber timer to a wrong date. Now we are somewhere in the middle of the space, and we also decided to use this opportunity and get back to our Starship port to modify a little bit our ship before we start the new year of expeditions. All previous sessions we were playing around with older version of ServiceNow Studio, and from the new series we would like to enter the new version of ServiceNow Studio, which allows us to get a more modern ServiceNow development experience. And before doing that, to avoid any issues with the developments we have already prepared in our application, which we were developing in the last season, we would like to store it somewhere safe. And this is what our session will be about. So guys, say hi after our long dream.
Hi.
We are ready to get back on track. So guys, what are we going to begin with?
Yeah, maybe let's talk about what are the options to storing an application in ServiceNow, especially if you're on a PDI, right? So we don't want to do this with update sets because update sets are old school. We are on a PDI, so therefore we cannot leverage the application repository. They are only available on customer instances. So the only option we have to store application and backup is a Git repository.
So for those who don't know what is this all about, that as you know, that PDIs are provided basically free of charge. However, there are conditions, which means that ServiceNow might withdraw them without a formal warning, I would say. So, I mean, we all know that the rules of the usage of PDIs, that after 10 days of inactivity, they are automatically withdrawn, right? Sometimes in the community, you can hear here and there that for some reason they were reset or whatever, right? So that ServiceNow has this right to do this with the instance. For some reason, people are trying to kind of get ServiceNow to answer for this. But again, right, the PDI is not for you to do any production work. It's for you to play with the features, test releases, right, etc., etc. So keep your work always safe. It's on you, not on ServiceNow, right? It's like in a buggy video game where you always need to save your progress after each level, right? Otherwise, you're lost. First of all, let us talk about the option that Mike mentioned, right? I will go to the older studio, and when you are working in a production environment, let's say, let me find our Expeditions app, and your application is ready to be released, you have an option to go to switch and here utilize publish feature. Using this publish feature, you will be able to publish your application in your corporate application repository, which will be shared with all those instances that are connected to your account. This is a very powerful feature that allows you to control how you publish your applications. How can we store the application that we develop on the PDI the other way? What other options do we have? For that, we are saying bye-bye to the older version of ServiceNow Studio and switching to the new one by clicking on the Try It Out button. All right, so it immediately opens up the record, the application record we were working in the older studio, and from here we can continue our experience, let's say.
Yeah, first of all, we need a kind of Git repository, a kind of external storage where we can publish the application to. And this is not provided by ServiceNow, so therefore we have to find any external provider. And nowadays, GitHub is the most famous option we have. It's free, and therefore we should leverage this.
And luckily for us, I have up and running Git repository. Here we are. Yeah, sorry, it's my photo from 80s or 70s.
Impressive, all the cards here.
Yeah, that's what you get if you participate in yearly hackathon activities and Hacktoberfest especially, right? In the interface of GitHub, we now I presume need to create a blank repository so that we can point ServiceNow to it afterwards. And to do that, you can utilize this plus icon on the top right corner where you can select a new repository. So first of all, let's give it a name. The description could be provided as well. Something meaningful, of course. I will make it private for the time being. However, if you would like to make your repository available for everybody, right, you can set it public. Let's create it. And here we come to the first page, which has some important information that we are going to use. And I'm talking about this Git link. Let's make a copy of it and store it somewhere. Now, what's next? I presume we can now do something in ServiceNow already, or not? All right, let's check. Source control, link to source control. This is the option that was previously available on the top menu of the older Studio and allowed you to connect your application to a repository. Let's click and see what we need. The protocol, HTTPS or SSH. In our case, we'll be using HTTPS. And then the branch. By default, ServiceNow would like you to store your application in a custom branch. But in our case, you can remove it and utilize the default one, which I presume will be main.
Yes.
What else do we need? Do we need to connect with a mid server? Not in this case, we'll be connecting directly. And here is the important one, because as you can see, the branch is not required, right? The default email is not required, but credential is required, because without credential, you cannot, of course, connect two systems together.
So how do we do a credential?
Where do we get the credential?
Yeah, we need to do two things. We first need to configure a credential in GitHub and then also configure a record here in ServiceNow to connect these two information.
Let's start with the GitHub. So on the GitHub, what you need to do is to click on the profile icon and switch to settings. Then you need to scroll down to developer settings. And here you need to select personal access tokens. There are two ways to use a classic token or a fine-grained token, which allows you to give it a little bit more granular security. So we'll go for the modern option. And here you can generate it by clicking the generate new token. Let's do this. Let's call it as the application name. Normally, by default, you kind of need to have a limitation or an expiration date for your token. But in our case, we'll set it as a no expiration, which is a kind of a security risk, but we accept it. And we will only specify it for a specific repository, which we have created before, called Expeditions app. All right, now the trickiest part. What do we need from permissions?
There are two kinds of permissions. One is called anything like metadata.
Yeah, here's the one.
This is just for working with the repository itself. And then we need the fine-grained permission to read and write artifacts into the repository. This is something like contents, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Great. We now
wait a second. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. We now need to exactly. Here is where you see the read and write. Now we are ready to generate it. Let's generate. Confirm and generate. So here is where you see your token. However, you will only be able to see this token, right? As it's stated here, only this time. So we need to store it in some secure password storage or a credential storage. Great. Now we have the token and we are ready to switch back to ServiceNow.
Maybe one word regarding these token things. At the beginning, some years before, I was a bit irritated this concept. So at the end, this token is nothing else than username and password. The name of the token you entered is the username, and the token itself is a longer password. That's all. Nothing special. Just another word for the old concept.
To create credentials, you need to open the platform UI and then find credentials under connections and credentials application. This module here, open it. Here, we have already prepared one, but I will going to show you how to create a brand new one. You click new, and on the interceptor window, you need to select Basic Authentication credentials. But as we have already done this, we are not gonna stay much longer. So I'm going to open it. And here is this tiny form where you need to provide the information we generated on the GitHub. For the classic tokens, the username will be username for GitHub. However, for the fine-grained tokens, it's always the application name, right?
The token name.
Yeah, token name. So let me update password. And now it looks like we're all set. So first of all, as you remember, we have copied the Git link. We'll paste it here. Check that this is the link to your repository, then dot, and then Git. Branch, we will use the default, whatever ServiceNow suggests. And in credentials, we are now ready to select our Expeditions app credentials. Great, looks like it. We're now ready to link our application to the source control. So let's do this by clicking on the link to source control button.
And what is this process? What's happening now?
Something is happening. Wow, it's a success.
Great.
From the first time. After 2 months in stasis, we still can deliver. Yes. Great. Let's now check what happened on the backend, right? So let's open the GitHub account. Now I'm going to switch to my repos. And let's find the application. So guys, do you want to say a couple of words about what is actually stored inside?
Basically, all the artifacts that you generate in your application is stored here. So anything that you would normally push between instances with using an update set, that's also stored here when you're using Git.
So if we open this update folder and we open any of these options, we will see that it's exactly our well-known structure of basically of a record on the platform.
Yeah.
Now we know what is stored inside of the Git repository. So what do we do next?
Let's have a quick look at the application picker and the update set picker and see how it's been altered a bit since we now are connected to a GitHub repo.
Yeah, so after I refresh my page to reflect all the changes, first what we can see is down below this drop down, which first of all, it shows us the scope of the application, right? It shows it's here. And here next to the scope, I can see a drop down with a update set with my name. What is this?
Yeah. So basically now ServiceNow is helping you to avoid using update sets since you've decided to go on the linking of the source to a GitHub repo, which means you should no longer work with update sets. You should push updates through the repo and go that path instead. So every developer that's in this application will have their own update set with their name on it instead of naming their updates whatever they used to do.
That's great.
It's something like a replacement of the local repository. I don't know whether you're familiar with Git itself. If you're doing this in an old school way or not in a Java-based world, and you run Git from your local machine, you always have a local repository where you first push everything in and later it's synchronized with the remote. And this kind of name-based update sets is a kind of local repository. So each developer will develop the artifacts in his individual update set, and later they are merged.
Can we delete this update set?
Oh my God, no. If you want to continue with your application and destroy nothing, then you should leave it untouched. Never do anything with this update set. Don't close it, don't rename it, and everything will be fine.
All right, so what do we have here in the source control? We have a completely new set of available actions. Wow, a lot of new things. So probably now we can show our users how we can actually publish something or perform a commit to our repository. Let me change something in this application. For example, short description of this business rule, which will then generate us a new artifact we can then commit. All right, so let me change the name so it fits to the whole concept a little bit better. I'm going to save it. Great, now it's saved. What I can do now, I can click application details, switch back to the application tab, and now I can open this drop down and see that commit changes become available. Create branch, pull from repository, stash local changes. These are things we will discuss later in the more advanced sessions. So let us first try to commit and basically deliver it, this particular change or set of changes, to our GitHub repository. When you click on it, you see the list of all changes. And here on the left side, all the involved update sets. So I presume if you're working on it, Mike, I would have seen your name here as well if you have made some changes, right?
Yes, and this is the difference compared to the previously mentioned setting with individual developers on their individual machines. Here, if you are performing this commit changes action, you will see the changes of all developers working in parallel. And now you have to decide whether you only want to include your own changes or include all the changes from all the other developers. So this is always a bit tricky, and you have to be really careful what you are doing here.
Perfect. Now we can continue with the commit. Each commit will require you to leave a comment. So bring something meaningful so that your
For example, a ticket ID or a story number, whatever,
Exactly.
which helps to identify the changes and the reasons behind.
Now let me press commit and let's see what. Bam. Our application was updated on the GitHub repository as well. And as there are no other changes, you see commit changes is no longer possible.
So do you want to switch to Git and see how it's reflected there?
Yes.
First of all, you see that commit happened right now.
Yeah. You can click on the one is exactly this link. Yeah. And here you see the set of changes, not only the files in this batch, but also the kind of diff editor where you can see what has changed for an individual artifact. This is similar to what you already know from ServiceNow, where we can see two versions of an artifact and the changes with red and green lines and so on. And I think you should also see, yes, I saw the change of your name exactly.
Yes, here the line 21 was replaced, which means this minus and then immediately plus with the new line with the new name.
So what you also can see, and this is a bit of problem in ServiceNow, these kind of noise. Noise means there are also changes which are not directly related to what you have done. You have changed one field, but below you see also more changes which are part of the artifact, the metadata, like created or updated on and updated by and so on. And this is what makes it so hard and difficult to merge something or to review changes, because you see a lot of noise and you have to identify what has really changed in this artifact.
Yes. Now, on the ServiceNow side, we have our application connected. Can I somehow disconnect my application? Maybe if I go to source control and try to edit repository configuration. But unfortunately, there is no delete. So, guys, it's the question how ServiceNow stores this information about connections to the repository.
Usually, you shouldn't have to, but there are occasions when you need to. So let's go into looking where the configuration is stored.
Okay, let me check. Switch to the core UI. I presume there should be some kind of a table which has all these configurations stored, right? Or maybe a set of tables.
Yes, it's the sys_repo_config table.
So it's sys_repo_config. That list. Let's see what's inside. Oh, here we are. We can see everything that is currently connected. So this is our connection. Let's check. Let's open it. Okay, yeah, this is exactly what I see when I open the edit configuration. However, here I have one more option, right? Delete.
Yes.
Yeah.
And having a look on this form, there's also something you have to have in mind when developing, especially in parallel on the instance. You see that there's one record for one instance connection, and in this record, current branch main. That means your current branch you are working on applies to the whole instance for all the developers. So all developers are working on the same branch. This is something you need to have in mind, because it's really different from, let's say, the Java-based world where everyone is working on his local machine on his individual branch. This is not possible in ServiceNow.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality of the development on the instance. Do you guys aware of any issues which you might have when you connect your application to a Git repository that will require you to, let's say, delete it, the configuration, right? Or maybe change it somehow or troubleshoot. Have you ever faced something in your real life?
No, not until yet.
Not the same for me.
For me, one of the issues that I see is when you are working, let's say, where you develop a flow, and there are multiple users working on the flow, which is a part of the same application. And for some reason, sometime the flow begins to tell you that you cannot perform any changes because it's been checked out basically by the other person. And and it asks you to commit all your changes before doing that. And even after you do this and source control shows you there is nothing to commit, you still cannot change this flow. Maybe someone from the audience can answer this question. Then, I mean, we're also learning here, right? The only way I found to fix this is to delete the repository configuration. Unfortunately, this is probably too rough, but
that you only should do this if you don't have any local stashes, right, which have any value. And otherwise, you would also lose these local stashes. But as you mentioned, we will talk about stashes and higher sophisticated concepts in later sessions.
Yeah, because as you might have already known, right, when multiple people are working on something, there might be conflicts, right? And this is something we will discover in one of our later sessions. Perfect. This was a really nice piece of information we have discussed today, guys. And after 2 months in stasis, it's of course like starting from scratch, starting from the beginning, but we hope that you liked it and you really enjoyed it. Maybe some final words, Mike, about this whole topic today?
Yeah, connecting ServiceNow with the GitHub is really cool and provides you with the opportunity to store your changes or your valuable application in an external repository. But of course, you need to do this. You need to commit regularly. Otherwise, you lose all your work if ServiceNow decides to drop your instance.
And with all this, We wish you a great weekend and great day. Have a
Yeah.
nice one. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.